Week number 6 of the 2025 fantasy football season will come to a close tonight with the doubleheader on Monday Night Football. In today's video, I'm going to help you guys get a jump on the waiver wire. We're going to be breaking down my top 15 waiver wire ads for week number 7 of the 2025 fantasy football season. Before we can break things down here for the waiver wire ads this week, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with my number 1 waiver wire ad of the week, and that is Kimani Vidal, running back of the Los Angeles Superchargers, going up against the Indianapolis Colts this week at home in LA. 45% rostered on Sleeper for Kimani Vidal. So if you play on ESPN, CBS, NFL, Yahoo, any other fantasy football platform, then the rostership percentage may be slightly different, though I will note in some cases there could be a drastic difference, like one player is rostered in 5% of leagues on NFL, but in Sleeper they're rostered in 70% of the leagues. Now, Kimani Vidal is expected to be the lead back, in my opinion, until Omarion Hampton does return. And Omarion Hampton is expected to return at some point this season, but is on track to be sidelined for more than the 4-game IR minimum, according to Mike Garafolo. He was the running back 7 last week up against the Dolphins in Miami prior to both Monday Night Football games. So all of these players, where they finished on the week, is very likely to change. He ended up winning 29-27 because the Miami Dolphins defense can't stop a cold. They can't stop anything. They couldn't tackle Justin Herbert get that sack on back-to-back plays where they should have had a sack, but I digress. We're not going to sit here and rant about the Dolphins. That's for other videos. We also ranted about them in the defense to stream video. So running back 7, they win the game 29-27, 18 carries for 124 yards and 3 receptions on 4 targets for 14 yards and a touchdown. A lot of us, myself included, expected Hassan Haskins to be the guy. He was on the team all summer. Kimani Vidal was on the practice squad, and Kimani Vidal became the guy. Not really that surprising, in my opinion. We talked about both guys last week, but I did definitely think it would be Haskins in terms of snaps. Again, Vidal, 18 carries for 124 yards, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 14 yards and a touchdown. For snaps, he played 67%. Haskins played 31%, and Nyheim Hines played 2%. In terms of touches, Vidal had 21, Haskins 7, and Hines 0. Now, I will definitely pump the brakes a little bit, because just because you blow out the back of the Miami Dolphins run defense that couldn't stop me or you running the football doesn't mean that Kimani Vidal is now a must-start running back every single week. But if you're down bad without Omarion Hampton, if your running back position is suspect, especially now with 2 teams on bye this week, the Ravens and the Bills, you definitely need to have Kimani Vidal rostered. If you're in like a 12-team league, probably not available. If you're in an 8 or 10-team league, it is definitely at least possible. Then we got Bam Knight, Zonovan Knight, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the Green Bay Packers this week, 19% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, it came out prior to the game that Bam Knight would be the starting running back for the Arizona Cardinals, and that was pretty fugazi, honestly, if you watch the game, because it started off with Michael Carter as the guy, but then Amari DiMercato ended up getting hurt, and Michael Carter slid into the third down role, and Bam Knight took over as the early down back, which obviously hurt like a butt cheek on a stick if you played Michael Carter, but was very positive for Bam Knight, who was the RB13 last week at Indianapolis. They lose that game 27-31. Even without Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals offense looked competitive with Jacoby Brissett under center, 11 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown, as well as 1 reception on 2 targets for 20 yards. In terms of the snap counts, Bam Knight played 51%, Michael Carter 44%, and Amari DiMercato 4% due to the injury. So again, Bam Knight is definitely a guy that you want on your fantasy team. You definitely want to pick Bam Knight up. But in a matchup up against the Packers, if you don't have to start him, he is not a guy that I am sitting here saying, you must start Bam Knight in week number 7, right? He is far from that, but he definitely should be rostered. And the fact that Amari DiMercato ended up getting hurt basically bailed everyone out who ended up starting Bam Knight last week. Next up, we move to Tyjae Spears, running back of the Tennessee Titans, going up against the Patriots this week at home in Tennessee. 33% rostered over on Sleeper. Very interesting that Brian Callahan ends up getting fired, and then who do they have to face after the firing? Their old head coach, Mike Vrabel. Very, very interesting. So without Brian Callahan, maybe we do end up seeing different usage for these running backs going forward in Tennessee. They lost last week 10-20 up against the Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. 5 rushes for 31 yards and 4 receptions on 4 targets for 19 yards. For Tyjae Spears, week 6 snap counts for the running backs. Tyjae Spears played 59%, Tony Pollard 43%. In terms of touches, Pollard had 12, and Tyjae Spears had 9. There's a clear uptick in snaps compared to week number 5, which was the first game where Tyjae Spears returned from injury. So right now, Tyjae Spears is definitely 33% rostered on Sleeper. More of a bench stash, not a guy that I would be banging the drum for you guys to throw into your lineup this week up against the Patriots, especially with them losing their head coach. Maybe that does give them a quick little boost sometimes. Firing the head coach, going to the interim head coach, does lead the team to have a short burst of energy that ends up waking the team up. So Tyjae Spears definitely should be on your roster. But again, if you're playing him, you're really in like a disaster mode scenario. Next up, we got Tez Johnson, wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up against the Lions in Detroit. 4% rostered over on Sleeper. Emeka Egbuka is scheduled to undergo testing on Tuesday to determine how much time he'll miss with the hamstring injury suffered versus the 49ers. But he is expected to miss some time, according to Adam Schefter. Wide receiver 24 last week versus the 49ers. For Tez Johnson, they eat the W in that game 30-19. 1 reception on 3 targets for 45 yards and a touchdown. In terms of snaps, Tez Johnson dominated 50 Shades of Grey style in terms of the snaps, 72%. Emeka Egbuka, 53%. Sterling General Shepard, 49%. Cameron Johnson, who the fook is that guy, 49%. And Ryan Miller, 25%. So when we are looking at the replacements for Emeka Egbuka, we're going to see Baker Mayfield in this offense basically now kind of shift to being one of those Oprah Winfrey offenses. And what I mean by that, I say this all the time with teams like the Packers, it's you get the ball, check under your seat because you all get the ball, right? It's not one of these scenarios where now that Emeka Egbuka is gone, Tez Johnson is going to get force-fed down his gullet 10 fucking targets up against the Lions. I don't think so, but he did score last week. He seems to be the best wide receiver on this team, and while he's like 145 pounds soaking wet, I would be interested in what might be a very high-scoring game up against the Detroit Lions. Again, far from a must-start, but if you have Egbuka and he's now missing time, you definitely would like Tez Johnson as a fill-in option. Then we got Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver of the 49ers, going up against the Atlanta Falcons, 52% rostered on Sleeper. He was a guy that we talked about last week as a fill-in if you had Ricky Pearsall, if Ricky Pearsall did end up playing. Now, I said Kendrick Bourne really shouldn't even be worthy of a roster spot in that scenario, but Ricky Pearsall obviously missed with the knee injury. George Kittle still dealing with the hamstring injury. Both of those guys should be back eventually, but who knows if they'll be good to go this week. Juwan Jennings is playing, and he did play last week, but he is playing through multiple broken ribs. He has a million different injuries. I mean, the 49ers just can't catch a fucking break. Fred Warner ends up getting hurt on Sunday in that game, so I don't know what's in the water in California, but it's absolutely murking these guys. There's fluoride in the water. Shout out to Alex Jones who said that. Not actually shout out to him, but, you know, he's the guy who said that. That was the reference in case you didn't pick it up. So who knows, really, if those guys will be back this week. Again, Juwan Jennings playing through multiple broken ribs really led to a bad showing last week. So while Kendrick Bourne is far from this long-term investment, he is a weekly fill-in, assuming that Ricky Rolex misses again. Wide receiver 10 last week at Tampa Bay. They lose 19-30. 5 receptions on 9 targets with Mr. Mac Jones for 142 yards. Back-to-back games with 19-plus PPR points. In terms of snaps, Kendrick Bourne was the leader in the wide receiver corp, 80%. Juwan Jennings, again, banged up, 77%. MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 61%. DeMarcus Robinson, 19%. And Mr. Porn Scar, Sky Robinson, Sky with 2 Ys more. I called him Sky Robinson. Sky with 2 Ys more, 4%. So again, while Kendrick Bourne is not this long-term option that you can play more than likely in your fantasy football championship game if you make it that far, he is a guy you can throw into your lineup. Next up, we move to Jalen Coker, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets in MetLife, 17% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, Jalen Coker is really close to returning, according to head coach Dave Canales. Based on the play of the non-Tedrow McMillan wide receivers, he should see work quickly in this offense. We've been talking about Jalen Jalen Coker over the last few weeks is a guy that you want to stash on your bench. You could throw him in your IR spot over the last couple of weeks, and he's a guy that I think is going to make an immediate impact in this offense. Not a guy that I would want to start necessarily in his first game back up against the Jets, but he definitely should be on your bench. Last year, we talked about this a bunch over the last few weeks, so we're just going to kind of brush past Jalen Coker because we've talked about him in week 6. We talked about him in week 5. So if you haven't heard the spiel, I'll give you the too long didn't read version, the fucking Cliff Notes version. Week 8 versus Denver last year, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 78 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 17. Week 15 up against the Dallas Cowboys, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 110 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver number 12. I'm not saying that Jalen Coker is going to be this locked and loaded top 24 option, especially with how good Tedero McMillan played last week, but he definitely is a guy you want to stash on your bench, especially if the Carolina Panthers are turning the page and looking much better offensively going forward. Now we move to another Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver, Sterling Shepard of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going up against the Lions in Detroit. 23% rostered over on Sleeper. Before we talk about Sterling Shepard as well as the rest of the players in today's waiver wire ad video, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friend stars partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you'll receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. If you don't know how the pick'em works on Underdog, it's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the players higher or lower. If both the picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description if you are a new user. Emeka Egbuka is scheduled to undergo testing on Tuesday. Like I said, we're just going to reiterate what I've already said, to determine how much time he'll miss with the hamstring injury. Typically with the hamstring injury, he's at least going to miss this week up against the Lions, which does hurt like a butt cheek on a stick. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, another team that just can't stay healthy. Wide receiver 39 last week up against the 49ers. They win that game 30-19. Mac Jones gets his teeth kicked in. 2 receptions on 3 targets for 51 yards. Again, for the snaps, Tez Johnson 72%, Emeka Egbuka 53%, Sterling Shepard 49%, 49% for Cameron Johnson, and 25% for Ryan Miller. So assuming that Emeka Egbuka misses, which would be the smart assumption. Again, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but that is the smart way to think about things. Sterling Shepard should operate as the number 2 wide receiver and potentially the number 1 wide receiver behind Mr. Tez Johnson. Now we move to Jordan Whittington. Are you bipolar? Because I'm by winning. Shout out to Charlie Sheen, wide receiver of the LA Rams, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval. 2% rostered over on Sleeper. Puka Nacua suffered an ankle sprain that will likely cause him to miss time per Ian Rappaport and Mike Garafolo. Rappaport also writes that it would make sense for Nacua to be out this game against the Jaguars since the Rams have their bye the game right after. Wide receiver 52 last week up against the Ravens in Baltimore. Wide receiver number 52. They win that game 17-3. Very, 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 very ugly game up against the Ravens. I thought this was going to be a belt-to-ass performance after what we saw CJ Stroud unleash the clip on him the week prior. Not so much here in this game. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 23 yards. In terms of snaps, very clear. Whittington is that guy, 92%. Adams, 79%. Puka Nacua, 51%. 25% for Xavier Smith. And Konta Mupfield, who the fuck is that guy? 17%. So Devontae Adams obviously is the biggest winner of Puka Nacua getting hurt. I understand it's terrible to say, oh, he's the big winner. He hit the fucking jackpot of, Puka Nacua getting hurt, and that sucks. Obviously, I don't want Puka Nacua to get hurt. I'm not going to sit here and fucking hit the Irish jig on the guy's grave. We don't do that here, but Puka Nacua going to miss some time, should be back relatively soon, so not too worried about him missing a serious amount of time, but should miss some time, and that will elevate Jordan Whittington up this offense. And again, if you are a Puka Nacua owner and you're like down bad, you're sitting there on Sunday shedding a tear because Puka Nacua was basically carrying your fucking fantasy team, Jordan Whittington is a must-add player in that scenario. Then we got mono man Sam Darnold, quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, going up against the Houston Texans, 51% rostered on Sleeper. Sam Darnold has just continued to look very good. Sam Darnold started off the year in a negative trend, and I said, you know what? I've been right about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was a guy that got groomed by by the quarterback whisperer, Kevin O'Connell, in the cold like Minnesota Vikings uniform, right? And it's not going to work in Seattle, but I was wrong. Sam Darnold is that guy. Sam Darnold is making the Jets look more and more foolish as the Jets continue to fucking lose games. They can't find a quarterback, and mono man Sam Darnold is dialed in. Looking fantastic. I don't think Sam Darnold is playing good enough to be like the MVP of the league. I think that should be Baker, touchdown maker, Baker Mayfield. But Sam Darnold has been great. Quarterback 8 last week at Jacksonville. Wide receiver, I just said wide receiver. They won the game 20-12. 16 completions on 27 attempts for 295 yards and 2 tugs. 4 rushes for 2 yards. 4 straight games with over 15 points. Back-to-back 20-plus point performances. JSN is that guy. AJ Barner elevating up this offense. They obviously have Torrey Horton, here's a who, as well as Cooper Kupp as well. So this is an offense that is firing on all cylinders, and Mono Man Sam looks incredible. So for some reason, he is still available. Definitely a guy I would stream. Now, if Sam Darnold isn't available, I would probably look to either Trevor Lawrence or Bryce Young if you have to pick up a quarterback. Next up, we move now to the tight end section. Now, we don't actually do this in order of by position, but we got 3 tight ends in a row for y'all. Mason Taylor, tight end of the New York Jumbo Jets versus the Carolina Panthers. A lot of people are going to be mad. A lot of people are going to be panicked dropping Mason Taylor after one down showing. 47% rostered on Sleeper. Tight end 50 last week up against the Broncos in London, baby. They lose the game 11-13. 1 reception on 1 target for 2 yards. Prior to last week, those 6+ targets in 3 straight games, back-to-back top 12 showings, and 11+ points in back-to-back games. So while obviously the fact that the Jets offense looked so limp dick, looked so inept up against the Denver Broncos is definitely a bad sign. That is not a great thing to see. The Jets are obviously 0-6. They're a complete and utter fucking dumpster fire, but they'll always have that Aaron Glenn dance video against the Buccaneers in a game that they also lost. They are a joke. I know, Nick, you're a Dolphins fan. The Dolphins are also a joke. I know the Dolphins are a joke as well. Fuck the Miami Dolphins and fuck Stephen Ross, our garbage owner. Failure. Loser. Bum. I know, oh, Nick, he's rich. Well, at least, you know, I might not be rich, but at least I know how to run a football team, you stupid fuck. Mason Taylor. I think Mason Taylor is a very talented player. I think the Jets bounce back now in the United States of America up against a much worse defense, so Mason Taylor should be fine. Next up, we got the other tight end that was in that game, Easy E, Evan Engram, tight end of the Denver Broncos, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. 47% rostered on Sleeper, tight end 18 last week up against the Jets in London. They win 13-11. Honestly, they should have lost that game, but the Jets offense really is that bad. 5 receptions on 6 targets for 42 yards, 1 rush, 7 yards in that game is the tight end number 18. Back-to-back games with over 9 PPR points, and this is not a guy that I'm looking to necessarily force into my lineup as like a top 12 option. If you're in a pickle, he should be at least on your bench if your team is struggling at the tight end position. So I think things are going to get a whole lot better for Evan Engram going forward, as well as the fact that the offense of the Denver Broncos win, you know, clicking on all cylinders, they actually look pretty good. So I do think facing up against the Giants this week at home in Denver should be able to be that bounce back for, you know, the offense as a whole, because up against the Jets, they just didn't show up in London, which is just another reason why I fucking can't stand these London games. We talk about this all the time. We're in a different country because everything just always seems out of whack. I get Broncos-Jets isn't a great game. I understand, but I feel like if that was in the U.S., at least the game would have been, you know, more high scoring. Then we got Harold Fannin, tight end of the Cleveland Browns, going up against the Dolphins at home in Cleveland. 50% rostered over on Sleeper. Tight end 6 last week at Pittsburgh. They lose the game 9-23, 7 receptions on 10 targets for 81 yards. Now, those numbers are definitely inflated. They're definitely pumped up by the fact that Dylan Gabriel threw the ball roughly 10 gazillion times in that game. But hey, we can't just brush under the rug that he was used that heavily. Back-to-back games with 11+ PPR points. Pretty clear that Dylan Gabriel loves a nice tight end. David Njoku hurt his knee last week. If he does end up missing, we would be banging the drum heavily for Fannin this week. If he doesn't miss, he is in that tight end 2 range. Good matchup, though, up against the Finns. In terms of snaps, 80% for Fannin, 44% for Njoku, and 27% for Blake Whiteheart. Next up, we got Kendre Miller, running back of the New Orleans Saints, going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. 45% rostered on Sleeper. At this point, if you haven't added Kendre Miller, what are you doing? Running back 40 last week versus the Patriots. They lose that game 19-25. Shocker. The Saints losing a game. 8 rushes for 21 yards, 1 reception on 1 target for 11 yards. Should see around 10 plus touches weekly. So while he's not a guy that you necessarily have to play weekly, and you shouldn't be playing weekly, even if Kamara stays healthy, in a spot situation, teams on bye, your running backs are fucking dead, they're sleeping with the fishes, shout out to Luca Brasi, then of course you can go ahead and put him in your lineup. You shouldn't be expecting much, but he could score a touchdown and have like 13 plus points. He has a Kamara insurance policy, and while the team says that they're not going to trade Kamara, that could just be one of those scenarios where, hey, we're not going to trade Kamara, wink, 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 unless you upgrade the price, wink, 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 unless you want to give us maybe a higher round draft pick, wink, 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 wink. I'm not sure exactly how much Kamara would go for at this point, considering he's old as hell. But team wants him. They come calling at the correct price. An offer you could not refuse. I think Kamara could be traded. Then we got Isaiah Davis, running back of the Jets, going up against the Panthers, 11% roster on Sleeper. Not like, unlike Kendre Miller, you can't even remotely play Isaiah Davis. But if Breece Hall gets traded, he is hot on the trade talk market right now. Everyone's talking about how the Jets are a complete disaster, which is true. They got to get rid of Breece Hall. There are teams that need a running back, cough, cough, the Chiefs, something like that. If Breece Hall was to get traded, then Isaiah Davis would be the clear running back 1 with Braylon Allen out of the picture. And if Hall doesn't get traded, you can just cut Isaiah Davis after the NFL trade deadline. Final guy to discuss here, Zay Jones, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the Packers at home in Arizona. 0% rostered over on Sleeper. Marvin Harrison Jr. dealing with a concussion, and in my opinion, will probably miss this week. Now, that's not a guarantee, but probably will miss this week, and that would elevate Zay Jones into the wide receiver 1 role in Arizona, as he was the leading wide receiver last week on the team outside of Trey McBride, who's a tight end. So he's technically the leading wide receiver, but he wasn't the team leader in terms of targets. Wide receiver 21 last week up against the Colts in This Is Our Colts, This Is Our Team, We Bleed Blue. In their stadium, they lose 27-31. Jacoby Brissett actually looks very good. I was genuinely very shocked based on how he looked in New England, but that really could just be blamed on the coach that they had last year. 5 receptions on 8 targets for 79 yards. Out-targeted and outperformed Michael Wilson, who had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 44 yards. So if you're in a pickle, you know, he's startable in deeper leagues especially. So thank you guys for watching today's video. You might be sitting here like, Nick, some of these guys were way too owned. Who should I add at this position if those players aren't available? Just ask in the comment section. I'm happy to talk with you guys in the comment section about any player that we don't include in today's video. If we wanted to talk about a million waiver, like Nick, should I add Kayshon Boutte? I think Kayshon Boutte's a little fugaz, and I'm not sure I really want to add him. I think he's more of that fool's gold type of a player. So just ask down below in the comment section, and I will discuss the player down there with you. If you want a guaranteed answer to your question, check out the Patreon. Link down in the video description, $12.50 a month. I answer all questions on there, and my half PPR and full PPR rankings are in there. Make sure you guys check out the Discord as well. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. I love you guys more than you will ever know. Thank you guys so much for all of the views, all of the comments this season. It means the world to me. We are nearing on 45,000 subscribers. I got a Colt 45 and 2 zigzags. Thank you guys all so much. Again, check out one of the videos on the screen if you haven't seen them already. Hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. Love you long time. As always, good boy.